So thank you very much for coming to the very last presentation for today. All you expected in the next 45 minutes. My name is Peter Lechman. I'm from Palo Networks. I'm responsible for the sales part in Palo Networks. I'm also here with my colleague Jakub. He's responsible for the pre-sale and the technical part. You can find us on the booth here in the expo hall together with the VMware, and I will also touch a little bit how we cooperate and how we integrate the VMware NSX environment. And basically today I would like to, for most of you, probably introduce what we do in Palo Alto Networks, how we're trying to fight the bad guys in security, and maybe you can learn more of how we're trying to address any security concerns you might have in your organization. So briefly, in terms of the agenda, I would like to, as I said, introduce Palo Alto. I would like to talk about the Wildfire, which is our sandboxing solution. I would like to talk about a bit of NSX integration and how we integrate them with our solution. And at the end, talk about the next generation security platform. Why we're here, why we probably came over, is the reason behind this big number, $445 billion. This is the value of the industry, of the cybercrime and cybersecurity industry, that the good guys and the bad guys are actually putting some money in order to either attack or either to protect themselves. I've just recently heard that the drug business is about $200 billion. So as you see, this is double the size of the drug business. So there are many bad guys probably now trying to get some money out of this. Also, the reason for that, why this huge number is increasing, is that there are more and more governments, big organizations investing into the cyber defense. As I know, officially the US government, for example, have published that they are officially start supporting the fourth part of the army. First is the Air Force, the Navy, the ground forces, and the fourth one is the cybersecurity army unit. So there are more and more. Why is that actually? Because there are more and more threats coming into the networks. If you're talking about the threats, we all probably know what were the known threats. We probably can fight them very well. There are many solutions on the market who are able to stop the attacks from known threats. But as the threats are evolving, there are new threat vectors coming. We see, for example, polymorphic malware. Many of you probably have some experience with ransomware. These kind of attacks are requiring a new requirements in the security. So the traditional legacy solutions are not able to protect from these attacks. This is also our goal, and I will try to talk about it, how we can find these kind of attacks also. So briefly talk about the Palo Alto Networks. I don't know how many of you have heard about us, so maybe if I can ask you to raise a hand. Yeah, I see. Okay, quite a lot. Thank you. So for those who don't, I will just quickly tell the story how we were founded. The guy who founded Palo Alto Networks, Nir Zuk, started the company in 2005. His previous history was actually tied with the Checkpoint, where he invented the first stateful inspection firewall. Later with a company called OneSecure, which was the first IPS, which was later bought by NetScreen and Juniper. And in 2005, he had a great idea how to develop a new solution, a new next generation firewall, and he founded Palo Alto Networks. As you see, we're growing very significantly in terms of number of people, in terms of revenue. So we're not longer a small startup company. On the market, we're number 3 today. And then I'm very happy that we can also introduce ourselves here in Romania, and hopefully we can have many more customers as well over here. What is the most important number out of those is that we are having 26,000 customers, and we are able to add 2,000 customers every quarter. And it's also because of you, and I know I see a couple of faces that I met today who are our customers already, so thank you for that, for becoming successful here as well. This is just a sort of a summary where we are, how the Gartner sees Palo Alto Networks. Also, you can probably see where is our competitors in terms of enterprise network firewalls. I know there are many Gartner versions. Enterprise network firewalls is perceiving us as one of the 2 leaders in this market space. What we usually see in the customer networks and What is the typical deployment of a security solution is that there is always some perimeter firewall. Most likely it's a UTM-based firewall, mostly focused on the layer 3 and layer 4 inspection. Many of the customers are start deploying some APT solutions. Unfortunately, mostly again on the two ports 25 and 80, which is protecting the email and web traffic. Some of them are implementing the network antivirus, IPS solutions, and many more other security solutions which we call sort of firewall helpers. Why is that? There are many security solutions which are able to detect new threats, but the problem is they're not able or not effective of stopping the attacks. And the biggest problem is that it's very hard to correlate all the data from all the multiple devices. They all generate lots of alerts, and many of them are false positives. So for many security specialists, it's very hard to find which is the real accident, what is really happening, and then to really react on these kind of incidents to stop the attacks. So we think that the traditional solutions require lots of manual response, and it's really hard to correlate all the data, and there's very limited visibility. How we're trying to address this, there are different requirements in the security departments, and we're trying to address, of course, all these requirements in different areas. So most of the customers still use, and I believe they will be using, internet perimeter gateways. This is usually the entry point where we're trying to, of course, address these requirements. Many of the customers, of course, have a data center perimeter. Many of those are starting to implementing network segmentation. They're trying to implement the internal firewalls. Mobile security is, of course, a topic which is also addressable by Palo Alto Networks. And we're also extending our solution to the public clouds like Amazon Web Services and Azure. What we do, many customers and many people know us as a firewall vendor, some of them as a next generation firewall vendor. I don't like this term anymore because every vendor on the market claims we have a next generation firewall and everything is the next generation. So I will try to maybe explain what is our approach. In terms of our approach, we're trying to be a device which is able to inspect the traffic from the layer 2 to layer 7. So we're trying to focus on the application visibility. Once we identify the application, we're trying to get the user information. Basically, we're trying to get information who is behind a certain IP address. And at the end, we're trying to do all the content inspection that is available, like IPS, antivirus, anti-malwares, and so on. So this is our approach. Basically, people who work with our solution don't work with ports, protocols, and IP addresses. They work with application information, with user information, and then with the content that is in the network. In terms of the other developments we do, and I will try a bit later to touch the hardware architecture that you can find inside of Palo Alto Networks. The next generation firewalls are working very well in terms of the visibility and in terms of stopping the known threats. So if we know the threat, we can create, of course, the antivirus signature, we can create the IPS signature. But what happens if there is a zero-day attack? If there is an APT, if there is a targeted attack on certain organizations that have never been seen, then there is a problem. And we see more and more of these attacks, and of course it requires some new approach. How we're trying to solve this is using our sandboxing solution called Wildfire. Wildfire is something you can see here on the top. What we do with the Wildfire, we basically are able to identify today more than 2,300 applications. And within these applications, we identify 250 of them which are able to carry some files. These files we are able to send to the sandbox, to the cloud. So we send the file to the cloud, and we inspect this file using the static and dynamic analysis. Static analysis is one part. Dynamic analysis means we're running the file in the virtual machines and virtual environments, and we're trying to simulate as the user would open a file, and we're trying to see what is happening basically, and if the file is trying to establish some connections to some command and control sites, if it's trying to change the registries, if it's trying to change itself, copy itself on the file system, and so on. If we see such a activity is happening, and for example it's just a PDF document or Office document, we basically create automatically a signature we send it back to the firewall, and we have a protection within 5 minutes. So we just recently announced a new version of our operating system, palo 7.1, and we're able to shrink this 15 minutes window to the 5 minutes. What does it mean? Basically, we provide attacker, for the zero-day attack, a 5-minute window to attack an organization. If we see that some other customers have seen this kind of attack before, we are also, of course, able to protect those all around the globe. Today we have more than 30,000 devices which are connected to the Wildfire. We process a huge amount of data, and I will share with you later a bit more, some statistics, some interesting statistics we have from the Wildfire. As I was saying, we have 26,000 customers globally. 9,000 of them are already using Wildfire. So I would say it's a massive number and a massive amount of data that we process in our sandboxing solution. In terms of the file types that we support Office documents, PDFs, we support Android APKs, Java containers, Flash, and from the last week we started supporting the macOS executables, which can be also run in the sandboxing environment. Third part that we started to do, not that long time ago, is called Traps. It's the Advanced Endpoint Protection. It's the green circle over here. This is our endpoint solution. Our approach is not the same as with a traditional antivirus. So we're not trying to today to replace the traditional AV solutions using the signatures. What we're trying to do is to focus on the techniques that the attackers are using in order to attack the endpoint. If you're talking about the techniques, it means that we have identified about 25 different methods that the attackers are trying to use in order to exploit some exploitation techniques in order to use the vulnerabilities in the applications. If we see and usually these attacks are happening in the memory, so if this kind of attack is happening, we basically stop the process of launching some specific application and the payload is not executed. If I give you an example is that if user receives a PDF, the PDF has some active content, he tries to open the file. Once the file is being opened, the Acrobat Reader process is being launched on the background. We inject a DLL into this process of launching the Acrobat Reader, and we see basically if any kind of these memory corruption techniques are being used. For example, we're talking about the heap spray, ROT, JIP, DLL security, and many more techniques that usually guys are using. If we see this is happening, as I said, we stop the process, we send the forensics information to the central console, and we are able to prevent such attacks on the endpoint. Another part is that we're also able to check the files and send the files to the cloud, to Wildfire. So again, there is also an integration with our sandboxing solution. So at the end, you basically are protected from the unknown threats from both the network side and the endpoint side if the user is currently not on your protected network. These are some of the capabilities of our solution. So I was mentioning the IPS antivirus, anti-malware signatures. These are all included in our threat prevention subscription that we use on our next generation firewalls. We have 73 URL categories that we also use in our solution in order to protect the users accessing some malicious websites, for example. Wildfire is the sandboxing solution which I just mentioned, Traps, the endpoint solution, and Global Protect is our VPN solution to protect the endpoints. Recently we have announced two more new services. First is called Aperture. Aperture is used for protecting the cloud-based applications like Office 365, Dropbox, Box, and so on. What we do over there, we have APIs with these cloud providers, and we're basically you're able to enforce all security policies as you do on your network in the same way in the cloud, and we're also able to inspect these files with the Wildfire. So this is something which is very powerful, I believe, and we all see the trend of moving the data to some SaaS application providers. We already have a solution which is able to provide you some security and protection on these kind of applications. And the last one is called Autofocus, which we have just also introduced recently. This is a sort of an interface for Security Operations Center analysts. And basically we're trying to provide content around the data that we see on the internet, content that you submit through the Wildfire, and of course some content that we have from the other feeds and other vendors in the marketplace. Once we see all this data, we try to correlate it. We try to give you information if this is a targeted attack on your company, if you are part of some campaign which is running globally or maybe just affecting some specific industry. I was promising to give you more details about our, let's say, hardware architecture, and this is maybe one of the differentiators that I could stress out. I was showing you the Gartner Magic Quadrant for enterprise network firewalls. I know there is also a Magic Quadrant from Gartner on the UTM firewalls, or Unified Threat Management firewalls, where Palo Alto is not present. The reason why we're not present on the UTM Gartner is that we're not a UTM solution. Why is that? Typically, UTM solutions use the serial processing of the packets, which means the packets are being a couple of times, they're running through different software modules and software blades, however we call them. And then, of course, you probably have an experience that if you turn all the functions and all the features on, the performance goes down very, very much. What we do, we use not a serial processing, we use a parallel processing, which means we stream the packets through the firewall only once. How it works, or what we do in terms of the technology, we have two motherboards inside the firewall. One is the control plane with a separated management access, and the second one is the data plane, which has a dedicated field programmable gate arrays, which are the dedicated processor, which are able to reprogram the whole firewall based on the new threats we're seeing on our platform. We use, of course, the three core technologies which I mentioned. We work with application identity, with user identity, and we try to identify the content. And all these we process in a parallel processing. We are also able to decrypt the traffic, especially the SSL traffic, and I will also have some statistics how much malware we see on the SSL encrypted traffic today. Now talking about a bit more how we see the attackers are usually trying to perform an attack is something that you probably also have seen or have heard of. I will try to now talk about what is our approach or how we can try to stop these attacks. The good thing about stopping these attacks is that if you stop it in any of these steps, the attack is not successful. Earlier you do stop the attack, better of course for the organization. What we're trying to do, or what the attackers are trying to do, is of course first breach the perimeter. So they're trying to bypass the firewalls, find a hole into network and then inside. For that solution, of course, as I mentioned, we have a next generation firewall solution with all different sets of functions and features, mostly used as a subscription services. Second part, or second step of the typical attack is that once the attacker is able to bypass the firewall, he's trying to deliver some malware, some malicious code. Once he's able to do it, in the next step, he's trying to find a victim, find a machine, user, server, where he can exfiltrate the data. Again, in this step, we're trying to use the NG firewall, use the sandboxing, use the traps. And in the last phase, if he's successful, he's trying, of course, to steal the data, exfiltrate it, set up some command control, communication, and send the data to the attacker. Again, we have some phases or some subscriptions or features of our next generation security platform, which we're trying to stop these attacks. So I was just talking about the platform, and I'm sure you will hear this platform buzzword in many times from other vendors, because I think they're also starting to realize that it's not about building the silo solution, but it's about integrating all these and trying to correlate the data and automate the whole process. So our approach from the beginning is that we have tried not to focus on port-based firewalls, because we think that there is lots of space and lots of limited visibility in this kind of technologies. And as I said, we try to limit this and make the attack surface smaller by identifying the application. Once we identify the applications, we try to see which are legitimate for the business, which are not. Maybe you don't want to use, or maybe you see after we give you this kind of visibility that your customers are using, or your users are using 15 different instant messaging platforms. They're using maybe some file sharing applications. These are the things that you can probably very hardly limit on the port-based firewalls. So this is a very effective tool how to have a visibility. Once you have the visibility, of course you can enable the applications which you want, and also the users which you want to access these applications. and then you run this content inspection. So you look for the vulnerabilities, you look for some antivirus within this data, and if you find it, you're able to stop it very effectively. Another thing is, which I was just mentioning earlier, what to do if the threat is unknown. The antivirus cannot see, or they can see it, but in 2 days, it's too late. There is no IPS signature which can stop this kind of attack. Then we use the wildfire. So we are trying to turn these unknown threats into the known. Once we discover this threat, we send the signature, we maybe later create antivirus protection, we put this information in the URL category, and we can stop these attacks. Same thing, we're trying to do the same on the endpoint. So we're trying to share this information, this intelligence from the unknown threats on the endpoint and stop this attack. If the user is not on your corporate network, then you can control it. Last thing is we try to correlate all this data through the alto flows. As I promised, I would like to share a couple of statistics about the wildfire because I think this is really, really crucial and important part of our solution. So wildfire, as I mentioned, is our sandboxing solution. As you see, the number of files submitted to wildfire since the last 2 years have increased dramatically. So right now, you see we process about 72 million of file types a month. This statistics was actually from January. I couldn't find the latest slide, but I know that in April we have reached the 100 million file types for April. So we basically on a daily basis we receive the 3 million of files which we're inspecting in the sandbox. In terms of the objects, we process more than 160 million objects. What it means by the objects, I was saying that we process about 100 million files. The objects are also the URLs. So, for example, there are 6 million URLs a month, which are completely new, and we're able to inspect the sites. Wildfire is able to probably download the malware on some specific sites. If we see the malware is being hosted on some site somewhere around the world, we put this information into the URL category, and we can stop this attack when the user is trying accessing the website, probably through some phishing campaign, clicking on the email link on his email. So this is, as I said, huge amount of data that we process. I was just to give some more numbers how dynamically we're able to process new signatures. Every 15 minutes we do about more than 300 antivirus signatures. Protections for URLs, 460 of them. So it's really, really fast and effective way how to stop the zero-day attacks. Maybe, I don't know, I'll give you a question. Do you know what is the typical time life or what's the typical life of a malware, piece of malware, a code? If the attacker is launching an attack, how long this typical code lasts, for how long? How many, maybe minutes or hours or days? Any guess? A week? Under a week, that's correct. The number, the average number, and this is coming from the Verizon breach report, is 58 seconds. So if you think that the antivirus signatures or the antivirus are able to catch some new infection in probably 1 day or a couple of hours, and then the malware can last for 58 seconds, you probably need something that is more efficient, and the time, I think, is something we're trying to fight here. How it works, as I said, we try to share this data from the wildfire. So we are creating our own antivirus IPS signatures. We're not using any third-party content inspections. Why? Because we can share the data within this platform. So if we discover a new threat, we put this information into the URL category, antivirus, IPS, and all these security models that are available on the firewall. Through that, we can, of course, then stop the attacks in an automated way, which is, I think, crucial because the attackers are using automated tools in order to create the attacks. And if there is a manual response, it's not really, we're not then able, of course, to stop such attacks. What are the possibilities to deploy the wildfire, this sandboxing solution? Of course, you can enable the subscription, and you can just receive the protections from the wildfire. So basically, maybe some of you might have concerns. We don't want to send data to a cloud of the US vendor because of some privacy issues, or maybe we're a government company, government institution, we are not allowed to send such a data. then of course you are able just to receive the protections from the other customers that they have seen it before. Second option is of course you do the sharing, so you send the data, you get the signatures back, and I would say this is 99% of our customers are using this subscription. Second or third part is you want to deploy some on-premise sandboxing solution within your network. This is also possible. So basically you're not sending anything to the cloud, you're sending all the files only in your network to the on-premise solution called Wildfire 500. So this is also possible, and then maybe you can also just want to share the protections or receive the protections from the other customers that have seen it on the internet. So these are the 3 deployment models. This is always possible, of course, so we can address also some privacy concerns from our customers. Why Wildfire is so important to us, Palo Alto Networks? I try to stress it out why this is, of course, the big source of information for us, and we try to use this information in many other products and many other services. So one of them is, of course, the sandboxing for our file wallet. I would say the crucial one. The traps, sharing the data with the endpoint solution, having the context in the autofocus, having the possibility to inspect the data from the SaaS applications, sharing the data with a third party, so of course integration with the CM systems, with the vendors like Tanium, Proofpoint, and the other ones, and very important one I would say is also sharing the data with other peers in the industry. Talking about that is maybe I think worth to mention. 2 years ago we have been one of the 4 vendors who have founded Cyber Threat Alliance. Cyber Threat Alliance is an alliance of independent vendors. So even we are many times competing on the same market, we have come to one table, sit down, and we think that because the attackers are able to share the information, we should share the information in the same way in the industry. So there are 4 founding members, Palo Alto Networks, Fortinet, McAfee, and Symantec, who have founded this organization, and there are about 90 new partners who are now subscribed to this alliance, and we're sharing the data within the industry. As I said, even we compete on some specific solutions. So this is all again something that why the Wildfire is important to discover the new unknown threats of zero-day attacks. Talking about a bit more about our NSX integration, as you probably saw in the expo hall, we have a same booth sharing with VMware. It's not just because to save some costs, but mostly because we have a solution where we very nicely integrate into their NSX environment. I don't want to talk about the NSX because I'm not a VMware specialist, but maybe some of you have been into the focus group of Christian, to where he shared the technical information, how we do integrate. Why I think it's important to talk about it is because more and more, of course, data is being used or being deployed in the software-defined data centers. So our approach to the data center is, of course, we support the physical, we support the data centers with, of course, the physical devices, but on the other hand, we of course support them in the virtualization. When talking about the virtualization, we, from the VMware side, we of course support the ES6 and NS6 environments. And with the NS6 environment, we're able to inspect the traffic between the 2 virtual machines. So basically to inspect the east-west traffic, not the client-server traffic, which is, of course, possible on the ES6 hypervisor. What are the components used for this for such an east-west traffic inspection? Of course, the VMware NS6 and the NS6 Manager. In Palo Alto, we use Panorama, which is a central management, and we are able to deploy the virtual instances on each hypervisor with our firewalling solution. I don't want to get very much into the details, hopefully to give you a sort of high-level information. The message for you is that we do integrate and we have an automated solution for deploying security in the automated way for NS6 environment. And if you have, let's say, more questions on that, please come to the booth. Jakub, Christian, myself will try to address and help you. Now coming to the end, this is the last section of my presentation. I would like to really sum up again what we do and how we can help you. You've seen the platform that we have with the different components. This is something that we think we can use, or you can use in an automated way in order to protect the attacks. What is basically available from Palo Alto Networks, I was talking about the supporting of virtualization. There are different, of course, hardware models. I don't want to go into the specification of each model. Don't worry. For you, I think the most important information on this side is that we're helping to address maybe projects which are working on replacing the existing firewalls, looking for next generation firewalls, looking for implementing the IPS solutions or a zero-day protection. Maybe you're thinking of how to replace the web gateway or implement a new VPN solution. These are all the use cases where we can address the requirements for Palo Alto Networks. From the, maybe quickly, a quick note about the licensing. I think it's very transparent, and I would say it's also very transparent mostly for you, our customers. When you are thinking of having Palo Alto Networks in your network as a device, usually, of course, you need to purchase some certain hardware or a virtual machine. You have 4 types of subscription. These are all optional, so you can choose which kind of services you would like to use. And at the end, they're all running, of course, the same operating system. If you want to manage multiple devices, we use the Panorama Central Management for the central policies and central log collection if needed, of course, and if you don't want to manage each device one by one. So this is mostly for larger deployments. In terms of the partnerships, I was mentioning that we have a very tight cooperation and integration with VMware. Of course, integration with all the different CM systems. You can see here, I think it's a must for every firewall vendor to integrate. There are some other companies, I don't want to go into the details. Maybe one that is, of course, interested is also AWS, Amazon Web Services, where we have some nice use cases how to deploy some security solution using the AWS and your local firewall. In terms of, let's say, our presence on the market, we always work with our partners, with our distributors. Here in Romania, our distributor is a company called Clico, and we, of course, one of our best and key partners here on the market is itc17. So in case you are interested, you would like to, let's say, test our solution, because I think that's the most important part to run the proof of concept in your network. We're very happy, of course, to deploy either a virtual machine or to put a physical device in your network. And at 2 or 3 weeks after you can test the device, we can run a report which we call security lifecycle report. So I highly recommend that. If you're interested, please talk to us or talk to itc17, and we will be able to help you there. In terms of support, we already have a local support here in Romania, which we can provide, again, through our partners. So this is something that is, again, available in case you insist on having direct access to the vendor support. We have a premium support available, so it's not a problem in terms of supporting you directly. And this is basically it from my side. So I would really like to thank you about the security, not only about the typical firewalling, not only about the layer 3 port-based stateful inspection, but maybe thinking of how to protect your organizations from the advanced attacks, advanced maybe persistent attacks, zero-day attacks. And also what I would like to take one of the takeaways from this presentation is that our focus is not to detect the threats. I think there are many vendors, many technologies that are able to detect things, but our approach is really how to stop these attacks, how to prevent you for being attacked. So as you see, we have a couple of tools which we're trying to help you to protect yourself. And hopefully, as I said, if you're interested, please try to run a proof of concept with us, and I'm sure we can justify that we can prove some added value also for you and stop some cyber attacks. Thank you very much. In case you have some questions, please come to the booth and we'll have to answer. Thank you.